Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for those to those who have joined us for other presentations as well. I'm pleased to see you again. This has been a particularly difficult time for our seniors, and we appreciate the debilitating effect that isolation and uncertainty due to COVID-19 has had on many of us. Through these trying times over the 7 months, Kirby Centre has recognized the difficulties that our seniors have faced and have remained committed to continuing to provide critical services, valuable information, and a little entertainment to help you cope with the emotional and physical isolation. One of the most emotional issues of isolation has been being not able to physically see or hug your grandchildren. I've heard that time and time again. Even as stay-at-home protocols are lifted across the country, health experts are recommending that older adults stay indoors and avoid contact with potential virus carriers, including their family members who aren't sheltering in place with them. That means that until a vaccine is readily available, grandparents will lose precious time with their children and grandchildren. Grandparents are vital in the lives of their grandchildren. They are a valuable resource because they have so many stories and experiences from their own lives to share. Oftentimes, children will listen to grandparents even when they're not listening to their parents or other adults. Grandparents also offer a link to a child's cultural heritage and family history. Children understand more of who they are and where they come from when they have a connection with their grandparents. The relationship between grandparent and grandkids are important for mental health and emotional health, as well as physical health. And whether you're distanced by current pandemic or separated by miles in the absence of regular physical contact, other types of contact with your grandchildren are key. Today, we're pleased to present Long Distance Grandparenting and welcome Kerry Byrne, PhD and founder of Long Distance Grandparents, to show you the meaningful and joyful ways that we can be with our grandchildren despite any distance between us. Kerry is an expat mom to 2 little boys with 4 incredible grandparents and 2 honorary grandparents. Not a day goes by they don't have some kind of connection with them, and she likes to say that she's learned from the best. Kerry cares deeply about the relationship and the bond her kids have with their grandparents. That's why she started the Long Distance Grandparent, to make sure grandparents, no matter how far they live from their grandchildren, will know them and develop close bonds. Please help me welcome Kerry Byrne to let you know all about how she started Long Distance Grandparent and what you can do to stay connected with your grandchildren. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is a particular pleasure for me to be presenting to and for a Canadian organization. I am an expat Canadian. I left Canada about just over 3 years ago. We moved to Dubai. I'll share a little bit about that in a moment because it's really connected to why I have come up with this business idea. And now I'm in Houston. I'm in Texas. And so I long for Canada to be, home with the grandparents. And we were in a very similar situation to a lot of long distance grandparents. We've had to cancel trips. We were supposed to be in Europe in June, and I'm supposed to be at our lovely family cottage right now in Northern Ontario. And I hear from grandparents almost every day now about the challenges that they're facing in grandparenting from a distance. And as Colleen mentioned, so I'm the mother. I'm not a grandparent, although I'm 44, and that puts me closer in age to a first-time grandparent than it does to a first-time mom. And I have a little boy who's 2. On average, even in Canada, the first time someone becomes a grandparent in Canada is on average about 51, and that's true in the US, similar numbers in the UK. What wasn't mentioned in the introduction is that I'm actually a research scientist, and I have studied caregiving, care, connection, and aging for the last 20 years. And for the majority of the time, I worked in an academic setting in university, but several years ago branched out to be a research consultant. And so I worked with not-for-profits, policy think tanks, and businesses, and help them to take evidence and put that into their products or their practice or their services or their marketing or whatever else. So I'm a real believer in, how can we look at people's experience, find out what kind of solutions they have been implementing, and then sharing that information widely. So which is really called a strengths-based approach to research or a solution-focused approach. And so connecting generations has always been, I'm just going to change pages here, because if you just indulge me for one moment to tell you about my why, connecting generations has always been something that's been a theme in my work. But it wasn't until I became a mother that I started to become really intrigued by this relationship between grandparents and grandchildren. And really by the very nature of seeing how much joy my own children produced for their grandparents. I felt like I have created these children and now you have so much joy. I mean, it felt like such a joyous occasion. And from the beginning, they've been at a distance. So my husband's British, my in-laws are in England. We have relatives in Ireland, in Scotland. The grandparents on my side of the family are all in Canada. And we've always been at a distance. And you know what? I've actually lived at a distance from my family for quite some time, but it wasn't until I moved away. So we were living in Toronto, still at a distance, but very reasonable to my mom and dad. And then we got transferred to Dubai, which would be ultra long distance, I suppose. And I'd left my dad, I'd walked away and, gone to live in England for a while, but I'd never walked away with someone's grandchild in my arms before. And it was such an emotional experience for both of us. And I remember thinking, I am not going to let this relationship, deteriorate at all because of this distance, because they were quite close at that time. And so I started to interview grandparents about their experience of being long distance grandparents. I did this project in Dubai where I talked to grandparents from all over the world who would come into Dubai to visit their children who were from, their grandchildren from the UK, India, Ireland, England, all over the place. And I really started to get a deeper understanding of what the challenges are for grandparents and grandchildren in staying connected. And so I started this weekly email and I started sending it out to grandparents who signed up for this list, just with a really practical but meaningful way to stay connected. And it kind of has just taken off from there. It turns out that there's quite an appetite for just having an idea on hand about how to stay connected with your grandchildren. So today, my goal is for you to walk away with some inspiration about the possibilities. I'd love to have a discussion about it and kind of chat about any challenges that you might be facing in your own relationships with your grandchildren, and maybe some of the things that you've been doing to stay connected with them from a distance. And then I want you to walk away with a few really practical, meaningful things that you can do to stay connected. So first of all, I want to just review some of the just to see if this resonates for you, and maybe raise your hand if any of these resonate. But I hear from grandparents, and after interviewing so many of them, this is kind of the bulk of what I hear, is that this is not the way I envisioned being a grandparent. And then they often share about, their grandparents living close to them and seeing them every week. And so there's a shift that happens between, what they envision being a grandparent and what it's actually about. They also talk about how they feel like distance is going to make it impossible to truly know them, to truly build that bond, or for them to know me. The frequency of interaction with their grandchildren is often a challenge. And so this can be because of, their own busy schedules, the kids' busy schedules, the parents' busy schedules. Time differences are a big one as well. We have a lot of grandparents on our list who are international, have grandchildren who are on a different continent. And then the quality of the interaction sometimes, where it's like they just want meaningful, consistent ideas for how to stay connected, because there's only so many things you can talk about, especially on video chat when that's your main way of connecting. And then the other piece is really about not being or feeling like part of their day-to-day life. And so these are some of the emails that I get about the challenges, right? When kids are young and you have to rely on the parents, drastically different time zones, and your own children's very busy schedules. I got this email yesterday from, quite an engaged grandmother who, talks about how they have a great relationship, but that she's just needing a richer repertoire for conversations and activities. And so based on all of these challenges that I've heard and also what people are doing, right? And also what's been working for people around staying connected, because I'm a researcher, I had to come up with a framework. And so this is I call it the connection framework right now. plan, partner, prepare, play, and preserve. And these are really kind of like the key elements to building a relationship from a distance. You know, it's based on research that I've done, academic research about staying connected, about the science of connection and science of relationships. And so today I'll just briefly review some of these and then attach them to some ideas so that you can kind of see how it works. In general, there are really three modes of connection, right? Snail mail, or as my grandfather used to call it, real mail. We'd go to the mailbox and he'd say, is there any real mail in there beyond bills or whatever else? This is the powerhouse of a place for long distance grandparents because no one else is really sending mail. Virtual connection, so this can be video chatting, which now grandparents have a lot of competition in that regard. It used to be the domain of the long distance grandparent, but now we have children, young children, teenagers, so that's the only way that they've been able to stay connected to anyone in their family or their schooling is through video. So there's a bit of competition on the video chat front. And then of course, in person. And I know, like I said, a lot of people are not able to see their grandchildren right now, but then also they're having trips that they really rely on every year to be able to build those in-person connections that they're not being able to take right now because of the virus. So I want to share this connection loop with you. And when I look at it, I'm like, oh, I need a few more arrows in here just to make it more complicated. But it's really, this is the concept of how can you take the mail that you send and use it to make a video chat more interesting, right? How do you use the in-person connections to then springboard into a video chat? You know, how can you use your video chat to make in-person visits more interesting? And so I had a grandmother share with me a couple weeks ago about how she always takes a video of herself going to the mailbox and putting something in the mail and then sending that to her grandchild, right? Creates anticipation. My aunt and uncle, who are the honorary grandparents in my children's lives, did that last week as well. So they sent us a message and it was all about, oh, we just put something in the mail. It will be there in 7 days. And then they kind of sent videos in with, a hint about what it might be. Turns out it was a shark tooth necklace. So you can imagine that was pretty exciting for a 5-year-old. But they made shark noises and they gave all kinds of clues about the mail. And so that just extends the connection. And then they were able to talk about it on a video chat. And so you'll see that kind of concept running through most of what I'm sharing. And I'm not trying to make connection is a science, right? And it really, like, building these relationships and having relationships between grandparents and grandchildren, there are things that we can do to strengthen that, right? And most of what is happening for a long distance grandparent, and I'm going to say about 75%, is the behind the scenes connection work. So it's the things that you do when you're not actually connecting, to plan for that connection, to partner with the right people to have the connection, and then to prepare. And so let's talk about that. So this, and I don't mean to sound really like woohoo about this, but what kind of grandparent do you want to be? And I always encourage, especially if someone's, about to become a grandparent, to someone who's long distance, to write a letter to the parents or to the grandchild. And this is not my idea. This was shared with me by a grandmother that I interviewed last year, and her grandson lived in Asia. I know that's not very specific, but, and she lived in North America. And so for the first 8 years of their life, there were language barriers, there were time zone differences. Turns out he ended up moving back to Canada. But upon reflection, she said, what I wish I would have done is I wish I would have written my son a letter about how important this connection is to me. And it's not because we don't have a great relationship. It's not because I don't think he knows that, but it would have just been something tangible to say that this matters to me, this is important to me. And it's a bit of a declaration of, wanting to have this relationship. The second way to plan, and I always encourage grandparents, is to try and commit to some kind of connection habit. And that could be, because what I hear from grandparents is, oh, I should do a little more, or I could do a little more to stay connected. And so just commit to, once a month, you're going to send a piece of mail to your grandchild, right? Or once a week, you're going to send, if you have older grandchildren, maybe it's Monday, Monday motivation, send them an article every Monday that you've read that made you think of them. Sorry? Colleen, you're just on mute, so I can't hear you.
Sorry, I think it was just someone had not muted it, but I think it was just background.
Okay, sorry, I thought maybe that there was a question. And so, having this kind of regular planned out contact means that everything else is just kind of a bonus around it. But if you kind of commit to these connections, I've actually been doing, a lot of people are talking about a gratitude practice right now, and that doesn't really do it for me. So I do a connection practice. And so in the mornings, I think about 3 people who could just use a text message, an email, a really newsy email.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep going. If you've got a question, then just pop on.
That's okay. I'm just muting the ones that have not muted yet. If you have a question, if you have a question for Kerry, feel free to unmute yourself to ask the question. But if you're just observing, then perhaps you can keep your mute on so that we don't have the background noise.
And so I show you this because this is an example of a plan that we have. So every Saturday we have a call with the grandparents. So you can see Oma down in the bottom left here has pink hair because during quarantine she decided to fulfill her lifelong dream of dyeing her hair pink, which has been, it's been so much fun with the grandchildren as well. But it's going to be to your left. We had a cowboy dance that we all learned and came together, and even Oma and Gramps did it. So I have in-laws who are in their 80s. And we've also got an aunt and uncle in Scotland. Oh, geez, sorry, hold on. But I'm just, this weekly phone call, everyone can't make it every week, which is fine. But it ranges in ages from 2 to 89. And, with some teenagers in there, we've done things like bingo. We've had a lot of family quizzes. We've done charades or dance charades. There are a lot of things that you can plan in advance. But for us, it's been the key to have that time because it's a time difference that we're dealing with. And so I think just having something, if you can get people to commit to, something that's once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever makes sense for your family.
It's a great idea.
The other part of it is partnering. And so who can be your partners in nurturing the bond? And of course, in the research and what grandparents tell me, the parents are oftentimes, the gatekeepers to the children. And they need to be, interested in wanting to promote that relationship. And it can be tough because, if you have, a son or a daughter-in-law or a daughter who's not kind of making that time to have the video chats, to do the FaceTime, to kind of facilitate that connection. That's something that I hear about, quite a lot. But there are things that you can do around nurturing those partnerships with the parents. And so, right now, as an example, a lot of parents are having a really tough time because they're trying to work, myself included, with small children at home. And so, send them a pizza on a Sunday night and then order one for yourself so that, you have a pizza party together on Sunday, dinner's taken care of. Just send an encouraging note to parents to let them know that this is, it's a tough time for you. It's a tough time for grandparents. It's also a tough time for parents. I think sometimes just that validation that we're in this together and that everyone is having a hard time. The other thing to think about is who are the other partners that you can potentially work with. Oftentimes, this is the grandparent who's local. So there might be a grandparent who lives locally, who gets to see them, a few times a week, and they are a particular ally for you because they can really understand that you're not able to see how heartbreaking it would be for them if they were away from these children. And so, have Skype when they're with the grandparents and have a grandparent party, right? Because I think that connection amidst everybody is really powerful. And then also cousins. So like older cousins to younger grandchildren, great partners. My son on this Saturday call comes on oftentimes because, not because he'll come on anytime to talk to his grandparents actually, because we always have something planned. But his cousin, who's 13, comes on, does the silly dances. And the cousin who's 13 is only doing it for the kids, for the little ones, right? So I think that, engaging cousins as a partner in your connection with your grandchild is another quite powerful way to partner. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. And then prepare. So this is even more important because, like I said, there's so much competition around video chatting, but preparing for your time together. And you don't need to be a 3-ring circus. Like there are lots of things you could do, especially for little ones. Who has younger grandchildren here? Kind of like 10 and under. Just look, I can't say everyone. Okay, great. So these are I give ideas for both, and we can talk a little bit more focused on older grandchildren after, as people desire. I wasn't sure the ages. And so I get made fun of quite a bit because I actually think you can nurture bonds with a sticky note and a Sharpie, right? Like there are a lot of things. I also have a million sticky notes always around. Like I've always got a sticky note and a Sharpie, because you can personalize anything that you send to them with a sticky note, right? So if you've printed off a coloring page to send to them, then pop a sticky note on it, right? With something like, call me and tell me what color you colored the, whatever it is. I don't know what's in the picture, but a lot of different things you can do. Another thing with sticky notes is just to make a little wall of sticky notes, because it's kind of unique. Kids aren't used to seeing that. And write out the things that you love about them, right? Write out some things that you love about them, take a picture of it, mail it to them, email it to them, and then ask for that connection. Right? So can you like video call me because Nana wants to talk to you about, in particular, about the third thing I love about you, or it could be about a memory, right? So it's really always building on what you send to try and prompt that in-person connection. And so the other way that you can use sticky notes, and this might just be the way that my mind works, I've always got a sticky note and a reminder and a list. But just having some conversation starters, right? So when they call, that you've got something to say. Have a couple of jokes written out on sticky notes. Would you rather questions? Because sometimes kids are just, they need a little bit of extra something to stay connected. And you can do that by, inviting them to a joke telling session, for example. On my website, I've got loads of, there's different links to conversation starters. And I think there's a blog on there called 31 Ways to Connect with Your Grandchild. And there are lots of links to like a joke site that's by age, age appropriate, to some would you rather questions, to family quizzes. There are quite a few resources that you can just go and download on my blog. Okay, and so I want to continue on talking a little bit about virtual connection, because this is, we're kind of being asked, a lot of us, to use all different kinds of technology. And so I think Zoom has become a lot more popular, but really I connect with people right now on Facebook video messenger, on FaceTime. My dad's on Skype, right? I have another friendship group on WhatsApp. Some people are on this thing called House Party. There's just so many ways to connect. When possible, try to meet your grandchild where they're at, right? Where they're, whatever kind of app that they're using, or ask them to meet you where you're at, right? So that doesn't become the barrier, so that it's like, I like to use Skype, but no one else in the family has Skype. Well, not very useful then, right? To be connected. But if somebody's willing to, just doesn't take long for a grandchild or a parent to download Skype and then just use that same technology. I'll talk about a couple of technologies that you can use as well that are really good for long distance grandparents, but I'm a firm believer that if you can just get a video connection going, a text message interaction going, that there are a lot of things you can do, just with that. I think also I hear from grandparents who say, oh, I can't keep their attention, on a video call. And it is really about sometimes expectations of, so I read somewhere that you can expect 1 minute of attention per year of life for a child. And some days that's even ambitious, right? And some days it's not anything to do with the grandparents who are calling. It's just that my son is in a cranky mood, right? I have a teenage nephew as well. I've got, my niece who's 11. Sometimes they really feel like chatting and sometimes they really don't. Now, if I have something prepared to talk about, then it tends to go much better. But I think I hear from grandparents now who have used some of these ideas, and I get feedback, which is, thank you for giving me the confidence to try something out and to be okay if it doesn't work, right? Because they're getting silly, they're trying different things, but they're okay if it doesn't work. I talked about kind of having, conversation starters. I think if you have for some of you have particularly younger grandchildren, that having, I call it kind of like a Skype grab bag at hand. If you go to my Facebook page for the Long Distance Grandparent, you'll see me in these big wacky sunglasses, you know, giving some kind of thoughts around how to video chat. But like I bought these on Amazon, you know, and so you can imagine that my 2-year-old loves looking at himself, right? So young children really like to look at themselves. And so that's a great way to get them, I'd say like 2, 3, and 4, buy some funny glasses, send them some funny glasses, you know, so that you've got, and like I've done everything from put a coffee filter on my child's head who's 2, and that becomes a hat, right? To wrapping us all up in toilet paper. I mean, there are lots of things that can be done. You just need to have a willingness and really to be prepared. I think I mentioned that, you know, there are lots of obviously like prepared games that you can play as well, right? Like a lot of people are doing bingo right now. A lot of people are doing the family quizzes. I had a grandparent message yesterday to say that she made no-bake cookies with her granddaughter. So they're cooking together now online, which I thought was particularly interesting.
Oh, that's a great idea. I just wanted to jump in here for just a second because I've been following Kerry now, you know, better part of this past year, and get her regular newsletters and tips. And one of the things that I do like, and I don't know if you can see here, are the little brochures, I guess, that you send out or that you can download. This one particularly, the Ultimate Video Call Cheat Sheet, has some great tips in it for how to engage your grandchildren when you're in video chats. And one of the things that I thought was kind of fun is wear something unexpected on your head, you know, so with the way you wear the sunglasses. So there's some great ideas in this brochure how to keep your kids' attention. So.
Exactly. That's a great hack. Perfect. I can't see your name, but that's exactly what.
Has anybody else, if you'd like to open up, has anybody else had experience with trying to connect with your grandchildren virtually? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, I have. My husband and I communicate with the parents and 10 grandchildren in California every Monday evening on Zoom. And I'm glad that I'm coming to this because we're kind of running out of ideas, and it's usually, well, what did you do so and so, and what did, yes. And sometimes now they're getting like try to think what they did, you know. So having a subject would be a good idea. Yeah, I'm looking forward to your ideas.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing.
We'll connect you with Kerry so that you can access some of the great ideas she has for you.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share at this point? Thanks for that, Val. Okay, shall I keep going?
Sure.
Okay, so now we're on to play, and we've talked a lot about play, but I think that one of the things, especially for older grandchildren, is about being playful. One of the kind of principles of long distance grandparent that I talk about is to surprise and delight, right? Like it's quite interesting actually. There's a book written about surpriseology. And of course I would find it, but it is really neat about how to use the element of surprise to stand out and to create more meaningful moments. And, you know, one of the ways, oh, sorry, I just tried to hit down. One of the ways to do this is to leave something unexpected behind. And I've shared this with my email list before, and people really liked it. And so the next time that you have the chance to visit face-to-face with your grandchild, you know, leave something for them in an unexpected place. Right now, while you don't have the opportunity to have in-person visits, potentially, send something to the parents and ask them to pop it into their pocket. And so here I am with the sticky notes again, right? It's like, take a sticky note and put it inside a cupboard with Nana Loves You. I mean, any place that you can kind of insert yourself or your love or your encouragement is just a really valuable thing. Tuck it in their pocket, you know, ask mom to put it in their pocket so that they find, you know, a little fruit, or like roll it up like a fruit roll up, and ask mom to put it, you know, where they brush their teeth so that you get into the nighttime routine. You can do this also. I mean, you can become a bit of a magician if you send something for a grandchild and ask mom to put it behind a pillow on a couch, and then while you're talking to them on video, pretend you're a magician, and then something appears under the couch. I mean, that's the way to tie that's the way to tie the things that you mail to the video chat, right? To make video chatting a little more fun. I think that for older grandchildren, sending things like a gift card for a coffee shop and then ask for the connection. They're so good at taking selfies, right? So like, take a selfie with your coffee. I want to know where you decided to go. Never be kind of afraid to ask for that connection, because when they get to a certain age, they absolutely need some prompting, right? To connect, because it just becomes, they're more interested, say, in friends sometimes. We'll talk about some rituals and traditions that you can implement with older grandchildren that I think are quite useful in working on something together, but I'll get to that in just a moment.
Lynn, before you move on there, Kerry, before you move on, Lynn had asked a question here. Lynn, you're welcome to open up if you like. I'm not certain whether you were referring, what is a realistic time frame for a virtual call with a 6 and 8-year-old? Were you referring to time of day or how length of time to expect, Lynn?
Oh, hi, it's Lynn. I was thinking about the length of the call. Because my experience is that after around 20, maybe 25 minutes, I can't, it's all over. So, and I'm just curious, does that sound realistic to you? And if not, clearly, what are some other things that I can do to keep their attention? And you've given a lot of great points. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Lynn. Oh, Val, did you want to jump in?
You need to unmute yourself, Val.
I will. Okay. What they do like showing you their pictures they've drawn. So my youngest is 5 and the oldest is 21. So she'll come and show the picture, or she's just learning to read and she'll say, "Oh, I read." I said, "Oh, that sounds great. Can you read it to me?" So we hear her reading the story and you wonder when she's going to stop. So that works, showing pictures and things they've created. Yeah, I'm just going to say that was all.
Yeah, I shared an idea that was along those lines, which was having, send a picture for them to color, and then they send it back to you, and then you put it somewhere really special in your house so that when you're on video chat, they can see, right? So oftentimes it's on the fridge, but it just is, again, shows them that there's that special place for them in your home. I'm actually have a special section just on books that I'll talk about as we move forward. Lynn, definitely 20 minutes is fantastic with a 6 and 8-year-old. One of the things that I try and encourage is to remember, if you always want to leave them wanting a little bit more, you can tell when they're getting fidgety, you can tell when, and, definitely move on and then just have another chat. I think that, you certainly for a 6 and 8-year-old, I think 20 minutes is impressive. We've kept them on the phone longer when we play. I'll share this game that we've played that might be of interest. When we do bingo, also when we're able to match it with a meal. So meal time is a great time to chat with children because they are at least expected to sit for a little while. Or you can even send them in advance, like a parent approved snack. I always pull out a popsicle. Right? We always make popsicles the day before. And then when they're getting antsy, I give them a popsicle. But I think that if you could send them something that I don't know, these made good, I don't know, whatever the parents are into, not a packet of sugar, because some parents are kind of averse to that. But that this is our snack for when we have our video chat together, and that you pull it out kind of 5 minutes in, so that you're able to kind of extend that. But yeah, I think 20 minutes is fantastic. And it's really just about having those connection points. So trying to do it perhaps, more often, but this varies, right? For all kinds of children. I'll talk about some reading apps that might really help as well in a moment. I'm a big fan of rituals, and I think for long distance grandparents, it's so important. It is a joke right now because whenever I say grandpa to my 2-year-old, he whistles, and we call it the grandpa whistle. It is successfully tracked down my nephew when he was lost in Ireland, in Dublin when we were there. Grandpa whistled, and 3.5-year-old Jack, he hadn't gone that far, but he came back to Grandpa when he heard the whistle. And so it's just something he's known for. We have lots of songs, like Gramps is known for the song, "Where Did You Get That Hat?" He always sings this song, "Charlie is my darling," all the time to my little one who's Charlie, and it calms him down. Like you would not believe. He wouldn't go to bed the other night. I started singing that song. And it's just a beautiful moment for me to have with him as well, because I can say, that's your Gramps, right? This is Gramps' songs for you. Let's sing Gramps' songs. So I've got a couple of things up here. You can always agree to think of one another when you hear a certain song, or even, when you see a red flower, right? Let's think of each other. Or when you see a bus, or like for your 5-year-old Val, probably very into like cars and trucks. And like every time you see a fire engine, let's agree to think of one another. And then you get to talk about it. And then he's going to want to call you when he sees a fire engine, right? And that starts to kind of build this like prompting of that relationship. I think that for long distance grandparents, being able to say, making up just, before we would have secret handshakes, but we're probably not going to have those moving forward. But you can do things like, when I put my thumb on my heart, then, that means I miss you, right? And when you're together in person, you have this little secret way of, or on video, right? You have this little secret way of saying that I miss you. And especially for younger ones, wink twice, wiggle your ears, do whatever you need to do to make it interesting for them. And for older grandchildren, some of the rituals I sent out this week actually about writing letters to doing something like in a volunteer nature with an older grandchild, coming together around a family project. So this month, the Long Distance Grandparent, we've been talking all about kindness and spreading kindness and how to use kindness to connect with your grandchildren, because a lot of grandparents share with me that that's one of the real values that they want to instill in their grandchildren is kindness towards other people. So I've shared conversation starters about kindness, but then also talked about, maybe it's something that we do every July moving forward, pandemic or not, is that we, do a chalk message outside for somebody, right? So get yourself some sidewalk chalk, get out there and write a nice message for your neighbor, right? And then they do the same. And then it's something to talk about. There are lots of organizations right now looking for letters and pictures to be sent to seniors who are isolated. Get together and each write a letter. And I had a grandmother who has a 9-year-old granddaughter, and she's loving this because they're writing this letter. They're talking about it. Why would they need to write that letter? So it's become a conversation piece for them. Sorry, Colleen, did you want to jump in?
No, sorry, it was my computer.
Okay, great. So, the possibilities are definitely endless, but in particular with older grandchildren, I think there is this opportunity to really get to know, like, what causes are they interested in, right? Are they really passionate about animals? Well, then, both of you in your respective communities collect old newspapers, donate something to like an adoption animal agency, something, just finding that way to like bond with them over something. I love this story because this grandmother started Halloween in a Norwegian village, and she is an inspiration, truly. Her grandson's 29 right now. He's always lived in Norway for the better part of his life. And so, she talked about how she sent over pumpkin seeds, and the grandpa, who was definitely her partner in connection, planted these pumpkin seeds, and then she'd send costumes, and then she started having to send them over for more of the children. And now they celebrate Halloween in this village, and they still do to this day, and he does to this day. And one of the things I love about this story is that she told me that about 10 years ago, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she's completely fine. But her grandson was 19 at the time and said, well, if grandma needs me, I'm going over. This is a relationship that was built, really ultra long distance, right? So I think that it also highlights why grandchildren are really important to grandparents and vice versa, right? They really help us to kind of understand something about ourselves. And so anyhow, he now has a daughter. So she's a great grandmother to a 4-month-old, and she's starting the long distance grandparenting journey all over again. So using books to connect in unique ways. And again, I know you're going to say, do you have any other idea besides a sticky note? But taking any, like, this is one of my favorite books, I think probably like 7 and under, How to Babysit a Grandma or How to Babysit a Grandpa. And it's so sweet because it's all about how to, you know, when you get dropped off at grandma and grandpa's, you know, how do you babysit them? Well, they really like to put olives on their fingers, or they really like to do all these things. A great tip is to just go onto YouTube and read the book in advance, right? Because so many people are reading books right now. And so if you want to send a book to a grandchild and you think, oh, will they like it? Are they unsure? You know, just go ahead. And I've done this myself for my own children, right? I've just had the book read to me and decided, and then you know what it's about. Of course, you can always buy a copy for yourself as well, so that you can kind of read it together. Online, this is where the sticky notes come in again, and it's where you can kind of get into the bedtime routine. So leave a sticky note, a surprise sticky note somewhere, you know, in the book, right? Like so I put in here, next time we video chat, I want to see your muscles, love Nana. And it's because he's showing them all the muscles. But you can put anything. You can just put Nana loves you, and it's just another moment and opportunity and way you can put in it. I mean, I guess be careful about asking for a video chat, because my 5-year-old would, you know, at bedtime use that as an excuse that he must call grandpa now. But, you know, when mommy or daddy say have a video chat. Sorry, I'm just going to catch up with my my presentation notes here. What else did I want to say? Yeah, with older grandchildren, you know, I mean, grandparents are busy too, right? And so they don't always have time to do this, but read some of the books that they're reading. You know, like if they're reading a chapter book that they're really loving, then read the book, because that's a really neat way to show them that you're really interested in what they're interested in. And then you can kind of have a fun conversation about it, about that book. If you order it from Amazon, does anyone order books for their grandchildren and send them on Amazon? Anybody do that? Just give me a little hello. Okay, so one of the little tricks is that, you know, that you can get an Amazon gift card and you can write something. You know, like, don't waste that space, right? Use that as a place to ask for connection, right? So like video call, because I want to know, you know, on page 6, how many times someone said the word X, or like whatever it is, right? But ask for connection during the video, because I want to talk about all the green things in this book. And if it's for an older grandchild, just like take a picture, okay, take a selfie and send it to me when you get this book, right? Because I want to see what it looks like.
It's a great idea.
Okay.
One of the things that I did recently with my granddaughter that was here was I'm trying to encourage them to read. And ironically, she, with her online schooling, had to have a book report. So I said, well, I gave you a secret garden, and you haven't read it yet. And so she used that for her book report. I said, well, why don't you read the book? I'll read the book, and then we can have a book club. You know, so maybe that's something that you could do long distance with your grandchildren, you know, have your own little book club.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think, yeah, having a book club, and even just having Nana reads, like there's a app called Marco Polo. I don't know if anyone's using it or not, but it's a bit like a video walkie-talkie, and it's really great for time differences or busy schedules, because it's not video that's required at the same time, but it feels like you're communicating back and forth. So like you can come on to this Marco Polo, and you know, we do it all the time, and show Oma about biking, and the kids are biking when it works for us. It doesn't work for her because, you know, she could be in bed by then. And then she can come back to us when it works for her to send a message. So it feels like a continuous conversation, but it's not. So I've seen someone who uses that to read a few pages of a book, right? And then the grandchild reads a few pages back. So, you know, you can do this in, yeah, there are so many ways. The ways to connect through books are fairly endless. This is the app. I think it was Lynn that was asking if you tried this or not. Caribou.com. This is an app that's free right now during the pandemic, and for the foreseeable future. But it's a way, they have a whole bunch of books, and I've heard mixed reviews about kind of, I think you can kind of get through the books and then, you know, you're through the books, but they have games. You can play tic-tac-toe with your grandchildren, and it's all through video. So it's an app that you put on your phone or your iPad. I definitely recommend for kids, they put it on an iPad, a larger screen, and you read books together. You could turn the pages, they turn the pages, you can play games together. There are a couple of other ones. There's another one called Together, another one called Redio. I've heard the quality of books in Redio is quite good. Most of them offer at least a 2-week trial. But, this is, again, where you have to switch it up, right? So maybe some of the conversations are, you need a little bit of enhancement. And certainly the Caribou app is a great place, definitely a great place to start for that.
It's a great resource. Thank you.
No worries. So then the final component to this framework is preserve. And this is the one that I feel really passionate about. And I'm not talking about preserving your life story for them, which I think is a good idea. I do think that's a good idea. But I went out and bought grandparent journals for all the grandparents in our lives, and no one has filled them in, even though my whole business is about grandparents and grandchildren connecting. But I think, and I've talked to grandparents about why they're not filling out these journals. Some do, absolutely, but they're overwhelming, right? Sort of like this great big, it's like a baby book. So how can I fault them? Because I filled in the first 5 pages of my child's baby book, and then that's it, and didn't even have one for the second. But what I want you to think about is how do you capture the moments of your relationship with them? Because that's the history that they want to have one day. So my grandmother died when I was 13. I was in the room when she died. It was a beautiful death. It was an example of what it should look like. But the last thing she said to me is, I really wish I could be here to see you grow up. And I have thought about that. Oh gosh, I wish, of course I wish that she could be here. But what I really wish too is that I had more of our moments captured together. And we live in a time where you can screenshot, right? Like I have 1 million screenshots of all of us getting together. And so that becomes your time together. That becomes your virtual time together. If grandpa's there too, get grandpa to take a picture of you so they can see one day, that you were trying, that you were in their lives, that you may have had this virtual relationship, but you were connecting. I also encourage grandparents to write thinking of you notes, especially now, because you can collect them and then give them to your grandchild at any point. And this just means if they crossed your mind, if you've got a grandson who plays hockey and you saw something about hockey, just write a little note about it. Saw this hockey today and thought of you, but make it official, right? Like, dear Jack, was thinking about you today. It doesn't have to be long, but just so that they have this collection of your thoughts about.
Hello?
Do you have a question? Oh, no, I think she's just not muted.
Okay.
Well, excuse me. Some great resources there, Kerry. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to end on this. I know we're coming to an end, and I want to make sure there's time for questions. But this is really, I call it the anatomy of a successful connection, right? And we've talked about this before. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So this was something that was planned. This is our weekly chat with the grandparents. You can see right here. Oh gosh, hang on. Now I've lost it. This is called, what is it? We played this so long ago. This is called Beetle Drive. So if you go to beetledrive.com, it's kind of a fun game to play for all ages. If everyone's getting sick of bingo and family quizzes, this one's kind of fun. All you need is to roll the dice. Kids love doing that. And then you create a beetle. You can download the worksheets for free, mail them over, email them to the parents. But we had a plan, right? Partnered with my sister-in-law and Oma and Gramps and everybody to figure this out. We were prepared because I had the popsicles for the kind of mid-game meltdown. And then I take pictures all the time. So I'm preserving it, right? I'm preserving this connection because I want to be able to show my children one day, how everybody tried so hard and wanted to have that connection with them. Not the best picture, but
it's a great picture. It's a great picture. It's nice to see the kids. I would invite everybody, if you wish, to unmute yourself. You're more than welcome to ask any questions that you might like. One of the things that I appreciate most, Kerry, with your information is that I suffer extreme guilt because I have grandchildren here that I can spend time with, and I can watch them grow. On the other side, it just breaks my heart that I miss all the memorable moments of my grandchildren's lives in Ontario. You know, I've missed things like graduation ceremonies and things like that. You know, I'm lucky to get to Ontario once a year, and now with COVID, who knows? So my relationship with them is just basically through phone calls and whatever I can do. One of the things I've started doing is they're both on Instagram. They're a little bit older. My grandson turned 11 and my granddaughter's 14. So they're on Instagram. So I'll go in every now and then and I'll post a joke. I'll take some of your suggestions and I'll post a joke that I think, might be interesting. One of them, my grandson is hugely into hockey. So posted a meme of a hockey player laying on a bed in his full uniform, just kind of when is hockey going to start again? With my granddaughter she's quite a talented artist. And so I had a picture of a painting that she did for me back when she was about 6 and taking art classes. I posted that. Where did that come from? She said she hadn't even remembered having done it. Or, we baked a cake and she was hugely into leopards, snow leopards at the time. So we baked a leopard print cake when I visited one time. So I sent her a picture of her baking this cake. So trying to connect ways like that, just have them to respond. But still, like many other grandparents, those are great connections, but there's nothing like having that one-on-one and, the personal connection and the hugging. So hopefully sometime soon that we'll be in a position that we can all start to hug our grandchildren again.
Yeah, I keep saying that once they have a beam me up Scotty kind of machine, then I'll be happy to be out of business at that point.
I don't think you'll ever be out of business. Has anybody got any questions that they might like to ask Kerry, or maybe some experiences with your own grandchildren that you can share to provide some resources?
Hey, Kerry, this is Ben from our parents' home.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. I was wondering, will we be sent this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes. I believe, Colleen, you'll be sending it?
It's being recorded, Ben, and once we have an opportunity to do a quick edit on it, then we'll share it with all the participants so that you've got that. You can share it, to other people that weren't able to attend, or those who did attend could have a chance to review it again.
That would be terrific. Thank you. And then the brochures and the blogs cannot be found like online?
Yeah, so just up on the screen right now, I've got the longdistancegrandparent.com, and you can download, I think at the top of that page, the 3 ways to build bonds from a distance. The video call cheat sheet is something that I can email to you. It's available on Instagram right now, but I'm happy to make it available to all the participants today, because it is a good cheat sheet for all ages of grandchildren about staying connected. And yeah, I have a blog where I'm now slowly transporting all the material that I've been writing in these emails for the last year into the blog. And so not everything is up there, but it's slowly but surely it's being populated. So thanks so much.
Perhaps I can take this opportunity to congratulate you, because I understand that you were just awarded one of the top 20 grandparenting blogs.
On the planet, apparently. Yeah.
On the planet.
I'm an accidental blogger, so I didn't really start out to be a blogger. I mean, what I am turning this into now is an online digital membership for grandparents. I didn't want to kind of have the blog with like advertising popping up everywhere. And so I also feel like there's a need for a community of people to come together. And so I'm only sharing it right now with my email list, just doing a bit of a founding members launch to people that are interested. But, I'm producing interactive printables so that you always have something to kind of say, to send, and to play with your grandchild month after month. And that's called the Long Distance Grandparent Society. So if you sign up for the email list, you'll hear about that. But you know what? I mean, come on to the email list, because I do send out every week just an inspiration or an idea, and some will be valuable for you depending on what age your grandchild is. I kind of hop all over to different ages as much as I can to just provide something for you to chat about with them that week, or something to do with them.
One of the things that you mentioned was, the habits. you know, get into the habit, you know, the planning, you know, preparing to keep this connection. And I find that getting your regular emails reminds me that it's time to connect, you know, it's time to do a little something. Yeah, so it's most helpful to get those. So I would encourage anybody to visit Kerry's website and register, and maybe get more information about membership and that kind of thing as well. So,
are there any other comments that anybody wants to make, or anything else I can share with you? I mean, just email me anytime. It's me at the end of the email inbox, and I'm happy to share any resources that I have created with you. So any other comments or questions?
And nothing in chat, so I guess we can presume that we can end the. Oh, wait a minute, Val has a question.
Well, my daughter thought of making a one of these little library things that you can have at the end of your garden, where you put books and things like that in it. And so one of the children, who's about, I think she's 16, has been working on decorating this thing. So each time when we've done the Zoom, like on a Monday evening, we're looking at the next stage of this little like house thing that she's making, you know, elaborate roof slats on it. So far it's not out at the front of the house. They're still working on it. And then what you're going to put in it, of course you could send books to go in it. So just an idea, and this little house is like really, really cute. She spent 3 weeks on it already, doing things, painting it and so on. That's just another idea.
It's fabulous. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, kids are looking for projects right now, right? And everyone is kind of wanting to to find things that are about giving. So I love that idea.
Well, talking that you have some relatives in England, on our circle here in Calgary, someone has got a red telephone box, little private library at their end of the garden. You know, it's obviously it's miniature, but it reminds me of England. I go, oh, there's a telephone kiosk, and there's some books in it. Oh, you can just take a book, or you can add a book. It's very, very nice. Great idea.
I just want to touch back again. I was just making some little notes when we were going along, questions or things that I wanted to ask you. Going back to, you know, connecting virtually, you know, I know some people, you know, a lot of older adults have some trepidation about getting online, downloading virtual apps and things like that, or some difficulty getting onto them. The Zoom seems to be something that's becoming quite popular as well. But one of the things I'm finding with my 5-year-old granddaughter is that she's gotten onto this Facebook Kids Messenger, which goes through the parents, but she's on it all the time. She can connect with her friends. She calls me like 50 times a day, and mainly because they have like the little filters that you can play games or put crazy hats on and things like that. And she was with me yesterday, and she got on it, and she contacted her great grandmother, my mother, and they got to have a chat. And basically, she, you know, just sat there and showed Gigi how to play these silly games on Facebook Messenger. So just all, you know, out of the blue. So these kids are becoming so savvy. I asked her when she was going to start teaching me how to use Zoom properly. These kids are so technically savvy that you give them an app, and, you know, that they can run with it. But, you know, is anyone having challenges trying to get on any kind of social media apps for connecting with their grandchildren that they might need some support with?
You know,
well, go ahead.
Sorry. You know, I was just going to say that yeah, the Facebook Messenger video is great, and it can also become, you know, it can become a bit annoying in using it, because then you have to kind of set your expectation, right? You're just going to be looking at each other with funny hats, and it's a great giggle, right? Very good moment. Yeah. Something like Skype or Zoom, where it's just kind of clean, you can just have that moment together, especially if you've prepared something, is also really beautiful. But you need to have a lot of things in your toolkit. And, you know, that's, I think, part of it, right? Is that if you're always Zooming, then switch it up and try something else, right? Like you've kind of got to surprise and delight. There's an organization, and it's based out of the US, but anyone can participate in it. It's called Get Set Up. And they have free, I took it actually just to test it out for grandparents, but they offer free classes about using Zoom, free classes about using Facebook and Instagram, a variety of other things. And they were great. You come on like this and you have a personal instructor who will kind of walk you through your own personal need, right? So I got on, I made a friend actually on the Zoom call, another person who was on the Zoom call, but I wanted to know something very specific about the use of Zoom, and so did she, and our questions were answered. So it's a great resource that I'm happy to also share.
Sounds like a great resource. Thank you. I'll check that one out myself. Well, if no one else has any further questions, as I said, I would encourage you to visit Kerry's website, and that is shown there on the screen, and check out further and get yourself signed up so that you can get some great tips for connecting with your grandchildren. And I appreciate you all joining us today. Just